Hey, brothers and sisters. I often hear people quote Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, and they get the quotes wrong, or people talk about stories about Malcolm and Martin and get stories wrong. How many of you know that Martin was a reluctant hero, or a reluctant leader, I should say? How many knew that Malcolm wanted to be, I believe, he just wanted to be just a quiet member within the nation, but Elijah saw something and he picked him up and picked him out and took him under his wing. I mean, you might know bits and pieces of these things, but how many of you really know that history? It's not talked about. They cast Malcolm as a hate monger, anti-Jewish. They cast Dr. King, or Martin, excuse me, as a dreamer, as being weak. But both men was the same. It's just that the media decided which one would be more presentable to the viewing public. Malcolm went and challenged and spoke in front of the United Nations. He went to other countries. Not saying that Dr. King didn't, but Malcolm did those things, and people will say that he didn't do these things. He didn't do any great things. They taught people to hate, which he didn't. Now, people say, "Well, Martin did all this, but yet you only hear bits and pieces of his story." You have to ask yourself, why is that? Now, I can tell you my opinion. Two strong black men getting together, hell, that scares the hell out of everybody, no matter what your ethnicity is, because of the things that we've endured, things that we've seen, things that we know. I mean, a lot of people would say, or fantasize, and myself included, what if if Malcolm had lived and him and Martin had sat down and actually just hashed out a plan? I mean, just think about the effects it would have had on the black community. But guess what? They probably would have found a brother and sister out there who would have bashed Martin and Malcolm. Because, oh, guess what? There were. But you don't hear about that because history wants you to think that all black people love Martin, all black people love or hate Malcolm, depending on who you talk to. Look how both men died at the same age. Malcolm was 39, just like Martin was 39. They've been dead a lot longer than they lived. Okay? Just think about it. Think about how people talk about they love Dr. King, but yet they turn around. You know he's a philanderer or alleged philanderer. You know he was a cheater. He was a smoker. The horror. Gasp. Malcolm didn't do any of those things, but yet they think that he plotted to kill white people, that he wanted to take over the government, all kinds of things. Because a few brothers and sisters within these organizations went rogue, should those brothers' legacy be held to such scrutiny or disrespect? So I ask you, how many of you truly know Malcolm and Martin's history? Now, some people will quote movies, the lines from Malcolm X to start Denzel Washington. And that's not an entire accurate portrayal. They left some things out. And that movie with Paul Winfield that he did back in, I think, the late 70s, early 80s about Dr. King, they left a lot of things out because people don't want you to get an accurate picture of these men. I'm still waiting for Hollywood to say, okay, we're going to do this biopic on Dr. King. I mean, we're really going to get into the nitty gritty. You know how we did with JFK. This is probably why I said Spike Lee's masterpiece is Malcolm X, and even Oliver Stone's masterpiece is JFK, even though there's some things that can be easily explained away or some things that can't be explained away. I'm still waiting on that pick for Dr. King, people. It's been in development for years. I mean, everybody said they love Dr. King, but when you get down to it, do people really want to tell that story? Because me, now I ain't going to tell you how I was to do the story. Because I've been playing it over in my head for the last 15, 16 years what kind of story I want to do with about Dr. King, or what kind of story I would do with both Malcolm and Martin. And just the thing is that people don't want to see that because they are afraid that not just black children or black people see this, but people who are identified as white would see this and react in such a way that white Americans, those in power in white America, might get frightened. This is why Malcolm and Martin had to be taken out at such a young age and during that time during the 60s. But see, that type of thing may or may not work today. They can't assassinate our people because they will cause open revolt. But what they do is they attack their character. How can you say you love Malcolm and Martin, but when the people sit out there and repeat what Malcolm and Martin said, they're troublemakers? They're haters. They're racial agitators and whatnot. So I ask you again, how many of you know Malcolm and Martin's history?